So we're just gonna do it, it's late at night, but, unfortunately, the opioid epidemic is real, and we know a lot of people who are affected by it, and we also know a lot of people who have been saved, because it's a real opportunity to actually get something that's really positive and helpful and truly a lifesaver out to people. We're gonna try to do a really quicker abridged version, and obviously if anyone's questions, we'll take those questions because it is important. But it is late, so I want the guys to hear it before they leave. So we have an opioid crisis. We have a problem. Unfortunately, it's affected our community. It's not something that we can just say it doesn't exist, it's not by us. It's there. The problem is, so what are opiates, right? Opiates are pain relievers. We know they relax a person, which is great, because if I'm feeling pain and I don't like that pain, whether that's physical pain, whether that's emotional pain, it's uncomfortable. So the opiates are able to block those pain receptors, make me feel better. If I'm, emotionally stressed out, I'll kind of relax, sort of sense of euphoria, feeling good, that contentment, and that's really great. The problem with that is also as it's relaxed, the number one is, what we call an overdose is actually, it calms you enough that your breathing slows down until it actually slows down, that it stops, heart stops, and that is not healthy for the human body. Also, like Moshe said earlier, is if your hat's on fire, pain's there for a reason. God created the world with a reason, and nobody likes to experience pain, but it's there because it's a message, right? The body's message saying, hey, something's wrong, deal with it. There are people who don't have pain receptors. It's a terrible disease because it's really scary. You could be walking on the beach and step on a little piece of glass and bleed out from nothing, right? So, typically if you hold your breath and not breathing, it's uncomfortable and you're gonna wanna breathe and you'll take that breath. With the opiates, it blocks all those messages and you're okay. Now, also important to know, often we talk about the opiates, we talk about Narcan, we talk about everything, and we think, that heroin addict in the street corner with the needle in his arm, and the reality is that that's not so. Opiates are much more than that. There's prescription medication or opiates. You go to your dentist to have a toothache, he gives you opiates. So opiates include all sorts of regular medications that we think is, totally, fine that you get from the doctor. It includes hydrocodone, oxycodone, like I said, morphine, codeine, and fentanyl. Percocet's actually not an opiate. Percocet's a benzo. Also a problem, but Narcan won't work. All right, but again,
Percocet is central to
yeah, it's a benzodiazepine. Even methadone is an opiate. So these are out there. So we think that it's like, that drug on the corner, but really it could be, your grandmother who has a medication she's taking for her backache, and the hip that she pulled. And so we have to really know how it affects. Also, like was mentioned, fentanyl is a big issue today. And you may think that, well, I don't touch heroin, God forbid, I would never do opiates, that's crazy stuff. But then you go to your dealer who you trust with your life because he's just the best guy in the world, he gets you the best stuff, and you buy some, really healthy, safe marijuana that's laced with fentanyl. So, you show up, you'll be really happy that, friend still has that Narcan, even though, God forbid, you never touch it. It's out there and it's a big problem in the streets. Now again, what we said is opiates, they block those pain receptors, and the person calms down, relax. Now, and that's what an overdose is. Now, what puts a person at a greater risk of overdose? So just to understand it, changed intolerance, meaning that for whatever reason, I'm not using as much as one of the hallmarks of addiction is this increased intolerance. That as I use, the same thing, chasing the high, which is why even when we talk about marijuana, people move on to the next thing, because if I'm using it for fun, so maybe it's fun. If I'm using it because I'm trying to deal with some emotional crisis, and at some point, as the more we use, the less it affects us, then we're going to do something else that's going to get us a little bit higher, a little bit better, and the tolerance goes up. Now, what happens when a person stops using is that tolerance goes back down. So a person stops using because they went clean, because they went to jail, because they're in the hospital, whatever reason, and the tolerance is down. And this is really important and really scary because, unfortunately, most overdoses happen actually when a person's clean. Most overdoses don't happen to the addict on the street corner who's been using every day. He knows what he's using. It happens when that guy who went to rehab and has been doing great, and now he's out and he's doing great, and had a bad day. He had a bad day. It was rough, and he relapsed. The problem is that when you relapse, you remember when I went there, I was using 3 bags of heroin. When I went there, I was using, 20 pills of oxys. But you don't remember when I started. And the truth is, Addicts know this. They cut back because they know, my tolerance went down. But they don't remember what it was that first time that one pill or half a pill was enough to get them, going. When they left, there was 3 bags of heroin. When they left, there was 20. So, yeah, they cut back. But they don't realize how much. And it's so devastating to talk to family, talk to somebody after, because he finally got it together. For years, we've been battling this. And he got it together. So, change in tolerance is really important. Mixing drugs. 1 + 1 isn't 2 when it comes to drug use. Even with marijuana. Marijuana and alcohol is not the same as marijuana or alcohol. Opiates is not the same. Opiates and benzos, opiates and cocaine. All right? It has a totally different effect on the body. Cocaine's an upper, opiates are a downer. It sends you in different directions, and people do all these things because even though it's dangerous, the high is crazy, and it's dangerous. And it puts the person at a much bigger risk of overdose, variation, strength, content of drugs, meaning what I'm using, what you're using, I'm out. Let me borrow what you got. It's something a little bit different, but it's the same thing, but it's not. Previous experience of a non-fatal overdose. Your story is incredible that you had multiple overdoses, because really the statistics are that somebody who had a non-fatal overdose and then overdoses again is, I don't remember the numbers, I probably written down somewhere, is much, 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 much more likely to have a fatal overdose than the next overdose. Using alone. Right? We often, again, think about the guy at the needle in the arm. That's, I think, 15%. The majority of overdoses happen over the course of several hours and are witnessed, that people are there. And again, that's like crazy that if somebody's there and nobody did anything to help. And we literally have a life-saving tool that could make a difference. So if we know what we're looking at, we know what's happening, and we know what to do, you could truly, truly save a life. And the last one that, increases the person's risk of an overdose is the use of drugs. Using any opioids, you're much safer. I don't know anybody. It's much less likely for you to overdose if you don't use drugs. I'd like to promote that one as much as we can. Essentially, our overdose is like what we said, it calms down, person feels relaxed, the breathing slows down, and eventually the breathing stops. That's our overdose, and that generally happens over a course of time. It doesn't happen in that 1 minute. That's, like I said, 50% of cases. The majority takes 1 to 3 hours to occur. Now, the hours and the numbers are somewhat important, but we'll get into that. And again, most overdoses are actually witnessed. People are there. We can intervene. We can make a difference. And that's where we come to the Narcan. Narcan is a safe, effective, legal medication. It is prescription. And I believe that prescription is because, they want people to get the training. They want people to talk about it. They want to be able to see when somebody's coming to talk about, hey, is there an issue we can deal with it? And it's important to know that there's no effective opiates aren't present, which means you could actually do Narcan right now, and if somebody wants to, happy to try it. It won't affect you. I mean, you'll feel a little tingle in your nose because it's, a nose spray, but there's no problem, which means if you come across somebody who might be experiencing an opiate overdose, give the Narcan. That doesn't mean that every, sleeping homeless guy on the street, you start Narcanning him. But it does mean, like, if there's reason to believe that this could be, and you're just not sure, it's worth the risk. There's nothing negative that'll happen. There's no negative health effects. It doesn't do anything if nothing's in there. There's no risk of dependence. There's no risk of addiction. There's no known allergies. There's no adverse effects. Do it. Essentially, what the Narcan does, and again, we're simplifying the science, right? We talked about receptors. The Narcan goes there, blocks receptors. The heroin can't, get onto those receptors, so it doesn't have the effect. The body's not getting, the messages are getting it through. And it also works almost instantly. Usually within 2-3 minutes, the Narcan works. In each bag, and we'll open the bags in a minute, has 2 Narcans. And we generally say you give 1 Narcan, and if it doesn't work, and after literally 2-3 minutes, give the second. Again, there's no negative effects, and maybe whatever he's taking, say he found it a lot, or it didn't get there for whatever reason, give another one. And once you give the Narcan, it should happen almost immediately. It lasts for about 60 to 90 minutes. Which, again, we'll get into, that's why I said those numbers are very important. It lasts for 60 to 90 minutes, and we'll have to. Now, that being said, there's a few things just to know about it is Narcan works on opiates. That means that if somebody is overdosed on something else and we're showing up and they're passed out, Narcan won't work. People always ask me, so if you overdosed on benzos, should I give it? Yeah, absolutely give it, because we don't really know. it won't work if it's on the benzos, but we don't know. Now, a person could also have multiple things going on. It's not going to work on anything. That's unfortunately reality. It'd be great if we could have something for everything. It works on this. It's also lasts for, also the impact is almost right away. They'll wake up almost immediately. And it is important to know, we'd love to believe that, you're going to wake them up and sell flowers and roses and they give you a big hug, thank you for saving my life. The reality is often not so much like that. People who are using drugs, people are using opiates specifically, are often doing so because they want that high, they want that numbness. When you give Narcan, you're essentially putting them immediately into withdrawal. So what does a person in withdrawal want to do? So they're not really acknowledging the fact that, like, hey man, thanks, you saved my life. Hopefully by the next day they will, down the line when they're able to free their body from this. But at that moment, they may be a little bit. So, anything that you need to do, make sure you get done beforehand. If you call 911 or have other people there. The other important part about this is the Narcan typically stays in the system for 60 to 90 minutes. Now, opiates could stay in your system for up to 6 hours. So now what happens when we give somebody Narcan? Right? They wake up, in withdrawal. What do they want?
Hi.
They want their drugs. So what are we doing when we want their drugs? We're going to try to, get our drugs, try to use more. Now, what happens if they use more? Nothing. You just Narcan them. The drugs have nowhere to go. There's nothing to bond to. The problem is, the Narcan lasts for 90 minutes. The heroin lasts for 6 hours. So when we go back to our statistic, right, somebody who had non-fatal overdose is significantly more likely, if they have another overdose, for that overdose to be fatal. Why is that? Because whatever was in their system was enough to kill them, was enough to overdose them, and you Narcan them. And now, not only is whatever there still, for the most part there, how much already, when wait, it stays for up to 6 hours, they've added more to it, the likelihood of this overdose being fatal, because each time they're going to keep trying to hit that, and it's just not going to work. So it's like super important that if you're going to come to a situation, Narcan, you don't leave them alone. Don't let them use. Call 911, get people involved, because that is, you just saved the guy's life, you feel great about it. It really feels terrible to find out the next morning that he had died an hour and a half later from an overdose. All right, let's make our efforts. Okay, so responding to an opiate overdose. So what are we looking for? So you show up, what are the signs of an opiate overdose? Essentially, slowed or stopped breathing, bluish, grayish lips or nail beds, and again, that's the reduced blood flow, and unresponsiveness, which means we're going to try to wake them up. We talk about a sternum rub. Try to, something that's uncomfortable. It's your friend, kick him in the side a little bit. Try to wake him up, try to get him moving, but if he's not responding, if you can't get any movement, now again, that doesn't mean that every guy who's sleeping, let's just jump in and,
Or like fuzz in your mouth. That's already too late.
meaning if they're foaming at the mouth.
Foaming at the mouth. Oh man.
It's not per se that your main signs are really that stop breathing. Now again, if you have reason to believe, give the Narcan. Right? The main thing that you're looking for is what it does is it dulls those senses and it slows that heart rate. That's what you're looking for.
Not first, ask questions and
Essentially, right? If you show up now it doesn't mean that if you Narcan something because you believe that, like we said, it works on opiates. It doesn't work on other drugs, right? If you show up to an old lady's house and you see her, Percocets all across the floor and she's passed out, that's like, oh, opiate addiction, let's do it, Narcan her. Maybe she had a heart attack. It's not gonna reverse the effects of a heart attack. But there's opiates all across the floor. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna call 911. They'll show up and they'll deal with a heart attack. But I don't know. So if we have reason to believe, it just might save a person's life. So first thing we want to do is try to wake them up. Not just randomly sticking up people's noses. Try to get their attention. It's your friend. Push them around a little bit, and you see, ask people who are there if something's soft. We know that they're using, then certainly. We should immediately call 911. I would probably say, and people will differ on this, I would probably say call 911 even before you Narcan them. Obviously, there's somebody else there. Ask somebody else to call 911 and go do what you got to do. But you want that call made. Once you Narcan, you don't want to leave him alone. Once you Narcan, he may be up and things get busy, things get hectic. Call 911. You want them on their way. It's just super important. If you do have to leave them for any reason, again, we're not covering, first aid, CPR, turn them on their side so that so they don't throw up, you save their life and then throw up, whatever. But basically, if you open up the kits, you have 2 doses of Narcan, and there's actually a blue card in here. The card is it's a prescription. It's a standard prescription that's signed by a doctor that allows you to have it. Now, I've never had a situation where like somebody Narcan, the cop showed up and like, where's your script? They're there to save life, but that is what it is. You have it in there. It's really simple, right? You take our Narcan, peel it back. It used to be a whole complicated thing. You pull it out here. There's no cover on it. There's no anything. Just take it out. Put it in the nostril. If anyone want to try it, Put it in the person's nostril and just push. It's 1 dose. This is an expired one. It's 1 dose. And that's it. Once you do it, it's suppressed. Right? It doesn't matter which nostril you do it. Typically what we tell people is if you gave it in 1 nostril and you have to give the second one, give it in the other nostril. Now, it's important to know that's not like law. So like if oh my gosh, I don't remember which nostril I gave it in, give the Narcan. Don't don't stress about it. The reason we say that, because really everything goes to the same place, is that maybe there's a blockage. Maybe there's something going on that you can't see, and that's why it didn't work. So let's, hedge our bets and hit the other nostril. But if you don't remember, give the Narcan. That's what's the most important. Again, just to reiterate, and I know I say it like 100 times, once you give the Narcan, somebody stay with the person. Call for help. Get them help. Often we're afraid to call for help, and this used to be a thing. There is the Good Samaritan law. They found that, they would be showing up to these parties, and somebody overdosed, somebody died. There were people around, nobody called. And they couldn't understand that. And what really, obviously, is, you go to a party, teenagers, there's drug use. No one wants to call the cops. We've even had a situation where somebody was overdosed and he said, no, don't call my mom. Don't call your mom. She's going to be so angry. You're going to be dead. So angry? Call. There is the Good Samaritan law, which means that you can't, anybody who's administering Narcan, anyone's calling the police, something like this, the police are there to save a life. They're not there to get everybody in trouble. That you can't be charged with, again, a certain level of offense. What I tell everybody is, that doesn't mean that this is like a, get out of jail free card, right? If you got, felony warrants in 15 states, I probably wouldn't be the guy administering Narcan, again, unless I'm the last guy there, right? Let somebody else do it and you go home. It also protecting the people that are doing Narcan, right? It doesn't mean that parties should still keep going. Everyone else should go home, give the Narcan, but it does protect them. That being said, if the cops show up and there's mountains of cocaine on your table, they're probably gonna have an issue with that. But for what's basically going on, and for this drug usage, and for this thing, they're not looking to press charges. They're looking to save a life, and they can't risk that not happening. If you use the Narcan, which hopefully you never will, but if you're in that situation and you use it and you need it to be restocked, or it expires, which is a much better option than having to use it, call us. We'll get you more Narcan. We'll make sure it's something that literally can save a life, and almost immediately. And we've really, unfortunately and fortunately, seen it really do it.